Hello everyone, welcome back to iFarouq Tech channel. In last tutorial we talked about CSS rounded borders, where we have learned how to make a round shape to our borders using CSS properties. If you missed that, you can check the content in channel's videos or the link in the description down below. And today we are going to talk about CSS margins, where we are going to know what it is, what is syntax, and how it actually works. But before we get started, I am wishing everyone here Happy New Year 2022. In this tutorial, first we are going to know what are margin exactly. The CSS margin properties are used to create space around elements or outside of any defined borders. So with CSS you have full control over the margins. We are going to take our first example here to show you what or how the margin actually works. But before then, I want you to know that a margin has 4 properties to assign it. That is, CSS has properties for specifying the margin for each side of an element. That are margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and margin left. These are the 4 properties we are going to use to apply the margin for individual sides. But all these 4 margin properties can have the following values, that are auto, length, percentage, and inherit. Also, you can use negative values to make or apply margin to your element. So let's take first example here and see how or what margin actually is. Heading to the individual margin properties, open a div tag. This div element has a top margin of 100 pixels, a right margin of 150 pixels, a bottom margin of 100 pixels, and a left margin of 80 pixels. So let's style it. Div border 1 pixels solid black, margin top 100 pixels, margin right 150 pixels, margin bottom 100 pixels, margin left 80 pixels, and give it a background color of light blue. So here it is. Let's save our work and run it. We made a mistake in my code here. It's supposed to be 1 pixel solid black. Yes, that's all. Refresh my page and see. This is our first example. As you can see here, I have 100 pixels between my heading and my div element here, as well as my bottom margin, while my right margin here is 150 pixels, while my left margins here is 80 pixels. So let's change the values and see how it's going to affect the element. So if I change my value here to 200 pixels, while my right button to 70 pixels, my bottom to 150 pixels, my left button to 180 pixels. If we save it and take a look here, you will see the difference. The distance between here and this is 200 pixels. My left margin is 180 pixels, while my right margin here is 70 pixels. My bottom margin is 150 pixels. So you can add something below div like paragraph to see exact distance of margin bottom between the 2 elements. Save it. Here we are. That's how CSS margins work, but this is a long way to make a CSS margin. The question here is there a way to make a shorthand property for margin? If yes, then how? Sure, there is a way that you can make your code shorter, or a shorthand that you can make or apply. So I'm going to show you how it's going to be. To shorten the code, it is possible to specify all margin properties in one property, that's in one single line. The margin property is a shorthand property for the following individual margin properties: margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and margin left. So how can we make it in one single line? If the margin has 4 values, then the code has to be in this format: margin 25 pixels, 50 pixels, 75 pixels, and 100 pixels. The top margin is 25 pixels, right margin is 50 pixels, bottom margin is 75 pixels, and left margin is 100 pixels. So let's put it on practice and see how it's going to work. If I get rid of this and set margin here 25 pixels, 50 pixels, 75 pixels, 100 pixels, change this to the margin shorthand property with 4 values. This is 25 pixels, 50 pixels, 75 pixels, and here supposed to be 100 pixels. So save it and see how it is. 25 pixels, and the bottom has 75 pixels. Left button has 100 pixels, and our right margin has 50 pixels. So the differences between the four sides of my elements are obvious, and you can literally see. What about if the margin properties has 3 values? So if the margin properties has 3 values, you're going to get rid of this one and 3 values. Then how it's going to be, our top margin is going to be 25 pixels, our right and left margins are going to be 50 pixels, then our bottom margins is going to be 75 pixels. So a right and left margin of 50 pixels, I'm going to get rid of this. So if you take a look here, you can see our left margin and right margins are equal, while our top margin and bottom margin are different. Why? Because our top margin is 25 pixels and our bottom margin is 75 pixels. So what about if the margin has 2 values like this? Margin 25 pixels, 50 pixels. That's, I know you can guess it, top and bottom margins has 25 pixels, while left and right margins has 50 pixels. So if you get rid of this, set here top, bottom margin of 55 pixels, and then add an of here it's going to be 2 values. Can see here. So that's how margin with 2 values works. What about if it is single value? If it is single value, that's margin 25 pixels. What will happen next? What will happen next is all the 4 margin sides are going to have equal pixels, equal 25 pixels. Both sides of an element is going to have the same or equal size, that's 25 pixels. So if we get rid of this and here single or 1 value, so then this element has top, left, right and left margins of 25 pixels. These are the 4 ways that you can use to make your shorthand property of any element you will like to. So our next example here is going to be auto value. So how to use an auto value in your margin property. You can set margin property to auto or horizontal center the element within its container. The element will then take up the specified width, and the remaining space will be split equally between the left and right margins. In short, the element is going to stay at the center of your page. So let's take example and see how it's going to be. Let me change this to paragraph. This paragraph has contained an auto value, use of margin colon auto, here to auto, and with 100 pixels. So these are examples. Let's save it and see how it's going to be. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to change this to be paragraph. So as you can see, this is how it's going to be. I don't like this. So this is how its auto margin works. If you need, you can adjust the width to 300. Still it will stay at center of your page. So our next and last example in this tutorial is inherit value. What inherit value and how it actually works? Inherit value is a way that can be used to make a child element copy its parent's behavior on a web page. How? That's what I'm going to show you now. For instance, if a parent element has the behavior of margin left of 100 pixels, then we can assign the child element to copy that particular behavior to use it as its own. Let's see how. Use of the inherit value. The paragraph. Let the left margin be inherited from the parent element. Another paragraph here with class X. This paragraph has inherited the left margin from its parent. It's supposed to be under div tag, and here border 1 pixel solid black, left margin 100 pixels, and child inherited margin left from its parent. So our parent element here is a div. As you can see, div is a parent element, while our paragraph class X is our child element. Our margin left to parent element is 100 pixels, while the child element has the same margin property that's inherit. So how can you make inherit value to use this behavior of parent element? So let's run it and see how it's going to work. So that's it. If you take a look here, you can see the border of div element, which has 100 pixels of left margin. And if you take a look here inside the border or inside the element, that means this parent element and this is child element. So child element copies the behavior of its parents of left margin. Left margin, it has 100 pixels, as well as parent has the same size of left margin with its child. So that's all for today. If you have any question regarding this tutorial or any previous one, make sure you leave a comment down below before you leave. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and take care.